Sergeant First Class Emily Chen stood in the middle of the Fort Benning training field, her hands shaking as she tried to orient herself on the topographic map spread out before her. The compass in her hand felt foreign, the magnetic declination calculations making her head spin. Around her, other trainees moved with confidence, plotting routes and calculating azimuths with practiced ease. Which city are you watching from? Share it in the comments. Maybe someone else from your city is here too. And remember, if you believe heroes appear in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and give this video a like. Sergeant Chen called out Master Sergeant Williams, his voice carrying across the field. "What's taking so long? This is basic land navigation." Emily's face flushed with embarrassment as she fumbled with the protractor. Her mind was blank, her training seemingly evaporated. The other trainees were watching now, some with concern, others with barely concealed amusement. This was supposed to be her element, her specialty, but she was failing spectacularly. "Sergeant, I'm having trouble with the calculations," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Master Sergeant Williams walked over, his expression a mix of frustration and disappointment. "Sergeant, you've been here for 3 weeks and you're still making rookie mistakes. How do you expect to lead soldiers in the field if you can't read a simple map?" The truth was, Emily Chen was not who she appeared to be. Her service record showed a basic military intelligence background, a few years of garrison duty, and a transfer to Fort Benning for advanced land navigation training. But that record was a carefully constructed fiction designed to hide a past that the Army had decided was too politically sensitive to acknowledge. Emily Chen was actually one of the most decorated military intelligence operatives in recent military history. She had served in classified operations across multiple theaters, leading intelligence-gathering missions in some of the most dangerous regions of the world. She had collected critical intelligence that had saved countless lives, earning a topographic intelligence badge, a meritorious service medal, and numerous classified commendations. But her most significant achievement, the one that had forced her into hiding, was being the first female intelligence officer to successfully infiltrate enemy territory and extract critical information. The operation had taken place in Afghanistan during her second deployment. Her team had been tasked with gathering intelligence on a high-value target who was planning attacks against coalition forces. The mission was supposed to be impossible. The target was located in a heavily fortified compound deep in enemy territory, and the area was under constant surveillance. Emily had volunteered to lead the intelligence-gathering mission herself. She had spent weeks studying the terrain, memorizing every contour line, every elevation change, every possible route of approach and escape. She had used her topographic intelligence skills to find a path that the enemy had overlooked, a route that would allow her team to approach undetected. When the time came, she had led her team through enemy lines, using her navigation skills to guide them through terrain that seemed impassable. They had successfully infiltrated the target area, gathered the critical intelligence, and then fought their way back to friendly lines, using the same route they had used to get in. The mission had been a complete success, but it had also exposed a problem that the Army wasn't ready to face. Emily Chen had proven that women could perform at the highest levels of military intelligence, even in the most dangerous situations. But instead of being celebrated for her achievements, she had been quietly reassigned, and her record had been sanitized. The official explanation was that her presence in combat zones had been a mistake, a bureaucratic error that had allowed a woman to serve in a role that was technically forbidden to her gender. The truth was more complicated. Emily Chen had been too successful, too visible, and her continued presence in intelligence operations had threatened the delicate political balance that kept women out of direct combat roles. So she had been sent to Fort Benning, given a new identity, and told to keep her mouth shut. She was supposed to be just another trainee, learning skills that she had already mastered years ago. But the training was designed for people who had never seen real combat, and Emily found herself struggling to remember the artificial procedures that had been drilled into her during basic training. The real Emily Chen would have known exactly what to do with that topographic map. She would have calculated the magnetic declination, plotted the route, and moved out with confidence. But the Emily Chen who was supposed to be here, the one with the sanitized record, was supposed to be learning these skills for the first time. "Sergeant Chen," Master Sergeant Williams said again, his patience clearly wearing thin, "I need you to demonstrate proper route plotting technique right now." Emily took a deep breath and tried to focus. She had to remember what she was supposed to know, not what she actually knew. She had to be the person her record said she was, not the person she really was. "Sergeant, I understand the theory," Emily said, trying to sound confident, "but I'm having trouble with the practical application." Master Sergeant Williams's expression softened slightly. "I understand this can be overwhelming, Sergeant, but you need to push through it. In the field, you won't have time to think. You'll need to act on instinct." If only you knew, Emily thought. Her instincts were honed by years of real intelligence operations, but she couldn't use them here. She had to pretend to be learning skills that were second nature to her. The training continued throughout the day, with Emily struggling through each exercise. She was supposed to be learning how to read topographic maps, how to use a compass, how to calculate routes and azimuths. But every time she tried to perform these tasks, her real training took over, and she had to force herself to make the mistakes that a rookie would make. It was exhausting, both physically and mentally. Emily was constantly fighting against her own instincts, trying to remember to do things the wrong way. She had to remind herself to hesitate, to second-guess herself, to ask for help when she knew exactly what to do. By the end of the day, Emily was physically and emotionally drained. She had spent hours pretending to be incompetent at tasks that she had mastered years ago. She had watched other trainees struggle with procedures that she could perform in her sleep, and she had been unable to help them. As she walked back to her barracks that evening, Emily couldn't help but wonder how long she could keep this up. How long could she pretend to be someone she wasn't? How long could she watch people struggle with problems that she could solve in seconds? The answer came the next morning, during a complex navigation exercise. The scenario involved navigating through unfamiliar terrain using only a map and compass, with multiple checkpoints that had to be reached within specific time limits. Emily was assigned to lead a team of 3 other trainees, and she was supposed to struggle with the basic procedures. But as she approached the first checkpoint, something in her snapped. She couldn't watch her team struggle with navigation when she knew exactly how to guide them. Her training took over, and she began leading them through the terrain with the skill and confidence of a seasoned intelligence officer. "Sergeant Chen," Master Sergeant Williams called out, his voice sharp with surprise. "What are you doing?" Emily looked up, realizing that she had slipped into her real persona. She had been navigating with the precision and speed of someone who had done this hundreds of times in real operations. She had been moving with the confidence of someone who had led teams through enemy territory. I'm following the map, Sergeant," Emily said, trying to sound uncertain. Master Sergeant Williams walked over, his eyes narrowing as he watched Emily work. "You're moving too fast, Sergeant. You're supposed to be learning these procedures, not performing them like a veteran." Emily forced herself to slow down, to make the mistakes that were expected of her. But it was too late. Master Sergeant Williams had seen something in her movements, something that didn't match her supposed experience level. The next day, Emily was called into Master Sergeant Williams's office. The older man was sitting behind his desk, a file open in front of him. Emily could see that it was her service record, but she knew it was the sanitized version. "Sergeant Chen," Master Sergeant Williams said, his voice serious, "I've been reviewing your file, and I have some concerns." Emily's heart began to race. Had she been discovered? Had someone recognized her from her previous assignments? "Sergeant?" "Your movements yesterday during the navigation exercise," Master Sergeant Williams continued. "They were too precise, too confident. You moved like someone who had done this before many times." Emily tried to keep her expression neutral. "Sergeant, I've been studying the procedures very carefully. I want to be the best navigator I can be." Master Sergeant Williams nodded slowly. "I understand that, Sergeant. But there's something else. Yesterday, when you were leading your team through that terrain, you used techniques that aren't taught in basic training. They're advanced procedures, ones that are only taught to experienced intelligence operatives." Emily felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She had used techniques that she had learned during her second deployment to Afghanistan, techniques that had saved the lives of her entire team when they had been ambushed by enemy forces. She had used them without thinking, her training taking over completely. "Sergeant, I don't know what you're talking about," Emily said, trying to sound confused. "I was just following the procedures I learned in class." Master Sergeant Williams leaned back in his chair, studying Emily carefully. "Sergeant Chen, I've been training soldiers in land navigation for 20 years. I know what a rookie looks like, and you don't look like a rookie. You move like someone who has been in combat, who has led teams through enemy territory, who has made life-and-death decisions in real time. Emily's mind was racing. She had to think of something, some explanation that would satisfy Master Sergeant Williams without revealing her true identity. Sergeant, I have a photographic memory. I can remember procedures after seeing them once. Maybe that's why I seem more confident than I should be. Master Sergeant Williams's expression didn't change. A photographic memory might explain your knowledge of procedures, Sergeant, but it doesn't explain your confidence under pressure, your ability to make split-second decisions, or your instinctive understanding of military intelligence. Emily was running out of options. Master Sergeant Williams was too experienced, too observant. She was going to figure out the truth sooner or later. The question was, what would happen when she did? Sergeant Chen, Master Sergeant Williams said, his voice becoming more serious. I want you to know that whatever you're hiding, whatever the reason for this deception, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to train you, to make sure you're ready for whatever the Army asks of you. Emily looked up, meeting Master Sergeant Williams's eyes for the first time. The older man's expression was one of understanding, not accusation. He wasn't trying to expose Emily. He was trying to help her. Sergeant, I can't tell you everything, Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I can tell you that I'm not who my record says I am. Master Sergeant Williams nodded slowly. I suspected as much, Sergeant. The question is, what are we going to do about it? What happened next would change everything. Master Sergeant Williams would discover Emily's true identity, and the Army would be forced to confront the reality that they had been hiding one of their most capable intelligence operatives. Emily Chen would finally be recognized for her achievements, and the Army would begin the long process of integrating women into intelligence operations. But that was still in the future. For now, Emily Chen was just another struggling trainee, trying to learn skills that she had already mastered, trying to be someone she wasn't. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered, and when it was, nothing would ever be the same again. The following week brought even more challenges for Emily. The training exercises became more complex, involving night navigation, urban terrain analysis, and scenarios that tested not just navigation skills, but also leadership and decision-making abilities. Emily found herself constantly walking a tightrope between showing enough competence to pass the course and revealing too much of her real experience. During a particularly challenging exercise involving a simulated reconnaissance mission in urban terrain, Emily was assigned to lead a team of 3 other trainees. The scenario required them to navigate through a mock city, identify key terrain features, and report their findings back to headquarters. It was exactly the kind of operation Emily had led dozens of times in real intelligence operations, but she had to pretend to be learning it for the first time. Sergeant Chen, you're in charge of this team, Master Sergeant Williams announced. You have 30 minutes to complete your reconnaissance and return with your report. Go. Emily immediately fell into her old role, moving through the urban terrain with the confidence of someone who had operated in real cities under enemy surveillance. She led her team with precision, identifying key terrain features and potential observation points with the expertise of a veteran intelligence officer. She was working with the efficiency of someone who had done this before, and she could see Master Sergeant Williams watching her with increasing interest. Time's up, Master Sergeant Williams called out. Sergeant Chen, report your findings. Emily stood at attention and began her report. Sergeant, we completed reconnaissance of the assigned sector. We identified 3 primary observation points, 2 potential ambush sites, and 1 high-value target location. We mapped 3 primary and 2 alternate routes through the area, and we documented all significant terrain features for future reference. The other trainees looked at her with amazement. She had used terminology and procedures that they hadn't learned yet, and she had organized the operation with a level of professionalism that seemed impossible for someone with her supposed experience. Master Sergeant Williams's expression was unreadable. Sergeant Chen, where did you learn to conduct urban reconnaissance like that? Emily felt her heart pounding in her chest. She had slipped up again, revealing knowledge that she wasn't supposed to have. Sergeant, I read about it in the training manual. I've been studying very hard. Really? Master Sergeant Williams said, his voice skeptical. Because that manual doesn't cover half of what you just demonstrated. You moved like someone who has done this before, Sergeant, multiple times. The other trainees were watching the exchange with growing interest. They had all noticed that Emily seemed to know things that weren't taught in class, and they were beginning to wonder about her background. "Sergeant, I can explain," Emily began, but Master Sergeant Williams held up his hand. "Not here, Sergeant. My office, now." As Emily followed Master Sergeant Williams to his office, she could feel the eyes of her fellow trainees on her back. They knew something was up, and they were going to want answers. But Emily had bigger problems to worry about. Master Sergeant Williams closed the door behind them and sat down at his desk. "Sergeant Chen, I've been patient with you. I've given you the benefit of the doubt, hoping that you would come clean on your own, but this has gone on long enough." Emily stood at attention, her heart racing. "Sergeant, I don't know what you mean." "Don't play games with me, Sergeant," Master Sergeant Williams said, his voice sharp. "I've been training soldiers in land navigation for 20 years. I know what a rookie looks like, and you are not a rookie. You move like someone who has been in combat, who has led teams through enemy territory, who has made life-and-death decisions in real time." Emily felt her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. Master Sergeant Williams was too experienced, too observant. He had seen through the deception from the beginning, and he was not going to let it continue. "Sergeant, I can explain," Emily said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then explain," Master Sergeant Williams said. "Because right now, you're looking at a possible Article 15 for falsifying official documents, and that's if you're lucky. If this goes higher up the chain of command, you could be looking at a court-martial." Emily felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. She had known that this was a possibility, but she had hoped that it wouldn't come to this. She had hoped that she could complete her training and return to active duty without anyone discovering the truth. "Sergeant, I'm not who my record says I am," Emily admitted, "but I can't tell you everything. Not here, not now." Master Sergeant Williams leaned back in his chair, studying Emily carefully. "Sergeant Chen, I want you to understand something. I'm not here to destroy your career. I'm here to train you, to make sure you're ready for whatever the Army asks of you. But I can't do that if I don't know who you really are." Emily looked up, meeting Master Sergeant Williams's eyes. The older man's expression was one of concern, not anger. He wasn't trying to expose Emily. He was trying to help her. "Sergeant, I have a classified service record," Emily said, choosing her words carefully. "I can't discuss the details, but I can tell you that I'm not a rookie. I have combat experience, and I have the training and skills to prove it." Master Sergeant Williams nodded slowly. "I suspected as much, Sergeant. The question is, what are we going to do about it?" What happened next would change everything. Master Sergeant Williams would help Emily navigate the bureaucratic maze that had hidden her true identity, and together they would force the Army to confront the reality that they had been hiding one of their most capable intelligence operatives. Emily Chen would finally be recognized for her achievements, and the Army would begin the long process of integrating women into intelligence operations. But that was still in the future. For now, Emily Chen was standing in Master Sergeant Williams's office, her carefully constructed world beginning to unravel around her. The truth was out there, waiting to be discovered, and when it was, nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and bureaucratic red tape. Master Sergeant Williams had taken Emily's case to his superiors, and the Army's internal investigation machine had begun to turn. Emily found herself sitting in conference rooms with officers whose rank and authority far exceeded her own, explaining over and over again why she had been forced to hide her true identity. The investigation revealed the full extent of the deception. Emily Chen's real service record showed multiple classified intelligence operations, leadership of reconnaissance teams in hostile territory, and decorations that included a topographic intelligence badge, a meritorious service medal, and numerous classified commendations. But more importantly, it showed that she had been one of the most effective intelligence operatives in the entire theater of operations. The Army's response was swift and decisive. Emily Chen was immediately promoted to Master Sergeant and reassigned to a position that matched her actual experience and capabilities. She was given command of an advanced intelligence training team, where she could use her real knowledge to train the next generation of intelligence operatives. But the real impact of Emily Chen's story went far beyond her personal career. Her case had exposed a fundamental flaw in the Army's policy regarding women in intelligence operations. The Army had been hiding some of its most capable soldiers simply because of their gender, and Emily Chen's story had forced them to confront that reality. Within months of her case being resolved, the Army began the process of officially integrating women into intelligence operations. The policy change was announced with great fanfare, and Emily Chen was invited to the Pentagon to witness the signing of the new regulations. As she stood in the Pentagon that day, watching the Secretary of Defense sign the documents that would change the Army forever, Emily Chen couldn't help but think about all the other women who had been forced to hide their achievements, all the other soldiers whose contributions had gone unrecognized because of outdated policies and political considerations. Her story had been about more than just one soldier's struggle for recognition. It had been about the fundamental right of every soldier to be judged by their abilities and achievements, not by their gender. It had been about the Army's responsibility to recognize and utilize the talents of all its soldiers regardless of who they were or where they came from. Emily Chen's journey from struggling trainee to recognized intelligence veteran had been long and difficult, but it had also been necessary. Sometimes the truth had to be forced into the light, even when it was uncomfortable or inconvenient. Sometimes the system had to be challenged, even when it seemed too powerful to change. The Army was better for having been forced to confront the reality of Emily Chen's service, and Emily Chen was better for having been forced to fight for the recognition she deserved. The truth had set her free, and in doing so, it had set the Army free as well. As Emily Chen walked out of the Pentagon that day, she knew that her story was far from over. There would be other women following in her footsteps, other soldiers whose achievements would finally be recognized. The Army was changing, and Emily Chen had been one of the catalysts for that change. But for now, she was content to return to her new assignment, to use her hard-won knowledge and experience to train the next generation of intelligence operatives. She had proven that women could serve at the highest levels of military intelligence, and now she had the opportunity to ensure that other women would never have to hide their achievements again. The truth had been worth fighting for, and Emily Chen had won her fight. The Army had been forced to acknowledge her service, and in doing so, it had been forced to acknowledge the service of all women who had been willing to put their lives on the line for their country. Emily Chen's story was a testament to the power of perseverance, to the importance of standing up for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. It was a story that would inspire other women to follow in her footsteps, to demand the recognition they deserved for their service and sacrifice. The Army would never be the same again, and that was exactly as it should be.